Hello friends, today I'll tell you about the movie Malèna. Enjoy watching. June 1940, Benito Mussolini has just declared war on France, and young Renato's parents buy him his first bicycle. Jumping onto his iron steed, the boy rides alongside a group of older boys, begging them to let him join their group. One of them gives a signal that Malèna is approaching. They all sit down, waiting for the girl to pass by. Jumping on their bikes, the boys race ahead of Malèna and sit down again in her path, just to gawk at her. Malèna is extraordinarily beautiful, and with just her presence, she ignites wild excitement in Renato. That night, the boy cannot sleep, his head filled with images of Malèna. In the morning, the group of boys measure their manhood. One of them tells a story. Once, while skipping school, he passed Malèna's house. She asked him to buy cigarettes. Her robe accidentally fell open, and she had nothing on underneath. The boy blames himself for simply leaving, thinking it was Malèna's subtle invitation. For the first time, Renato decides to skip school. Hopping on his bike, he rides to Malèna's house. Settling down across the street, he watches as the door opens and Malèna steps onto the porch. She asks Renato to run out and buy cigarettes, handing him money. She drops the coins on the ground, but this turns out to be just Renato's imagination. The boy steals his father's suit and takes it to a tailor to have it altered to fit him. When he returns home, his father finds out Renato skipped school and stole his suit. Renato is punished. The boy is embarrassed to wear short shorts, for which his friends constantly tease him. Renato's father promises that the day someone cracks Mussolini's skull, he will buy the boy a proper pair of pants. That night, Renato sneaks out of his room through the window. Reaching Malèna's house, the boy climbs a tree whose branches grow against the walls of her home. Renato removes one of the slats from the shutters, creating a small hole through which he spies on Malèna. Through the opening, he watches her lying on the bed, listening to news on the radio, as her husband has gone off to war. The next day, Renato spies on Malèna again, returning at night. She plays a record, and as the music fills the room, she begins to dance. Holding a photo of her husband, pressing it to her chest, she imagines him there with her. The following morning, Renato goes to the store and buys the exact same record. Before bed, he plays the song and imagines Malèna entering his room. In his fantasy, he gently touches her and then undresses her. The gang of boys, obsessed as ever, waits for Malèna once again to gawk at her. But Renato, pretending he has urgent business, leaves the group and heads into town to secretly follow Malèna. Walking through the main street, the girl catches the attention of everyone around her. Continuing to follow her, Renato discovers that Malèna visits a certain apartment. After school, the boy sees her again in the central square, where locals whisper about her, believing she is a courtesan. Gathering his courage, Renato decides to walk toward Malèna, but she doesn't pay him any attention. Still following her, Renato learns that Malèna visits the same apartment again. Determined to find out who she is visiting, Renato climbs over the gate and discovers that Malèna is visiting her deaf father, a Latin teacher. This realization brings him great relief. That night, Renato fantasizes about being with Malèna, engaging in a private moment of passion, though of course without her actual presence. The squeaking of his bed springs keeps his father awake, who shouts at Renato, warning him that such activities will make him go blind. The next morning, during the group's workout session, Renato hears from his friends the shocking news that Malèna's husband has been killed in the war. In the central square, a gathering is held where this tragic news is announced to the townspeople. While others express sympathy for Malèna, Renato goes to her father's apartment. Climbing onto the balcony, the boy sees Malèna lying on the bed, grieving over the death of her husband. Entering the room, Renato sits next to Malèna and kisses her on the lips, then promises to always stay by her side. After Nino's funeral, various rumors about Malèna begin to spread around the town. Standing up for her, Renato plays pranks on those spreading gossip. One day, arriving at Malèna's house, he steals a pair of her underwear hanging to dry after being washed. Thoroughly oiling the springs of his bed, Renato spends the entire night fantasizing about being with Malèna, though she knows nothing about it. In the morning, Renato's father enters his room, finding the boy lying happily with women's underwear on his face. Furious, his father punishes him, locking him in his room and boarding up the window. By the third day, Renato hasn't eaten a thing. After several days of hunger, a doctor visits the house to examine him. Listening to Renato's condition, the doctor advises letting the boy go outside, stating that fresh air is essential for his recovery. Riding his bike to Malèna's house, Renato notices the strange behavior of the men in town. A series of courting games has begun for Malena's heart. In school, during a Latin lesson, Malena's father, the teacher, receives an anonymous letter claiming that his daughter is sleeping with the entire town. That night, Renato rushes to Malena's house and sees her spending time with a military officer. The officer insists on meeting her again, as 10 months have passed since her husband's funeral. As he leaves her home, the officer encounters a local dentist on his way to propose to Malena. A fight breaks out between them over her affection, with Renato witnessing the scene. The commotion is interrupted by the dentist's wife, who beats her husband and accuses Malena of being immoral. By the next morning, rumors spread throughout the town that Malena has 2 lovers at once. When Malena tries to visit her father, she finds herself locked out of his apartment. He has changed the locks, refusing to see her after reading the anonymous letter. Malena is brought to trial, accused of causing the dentist's family to fall apart. To defend herself, she hires a lawyer. When the judge asks if the dentist spent evenings with Malena, she explains they met only once, which causes an uproar in the courtroom. According to Malena, the dentist was at her home for no more than 5 minutes, simply delivering medicine for her deaf father. As for the lieutenant Malena had been seen with, he was reassigned to Albania due to his connection with her. Before his transfer, he was interrogated and stated that his meetings with Malena were strictly friendly and that nothing immoral had taken place. At his speech, the lawyer declares that Malena is guilty only of one thing: being beautiful. Because of her beauty, everyone envies her and spreads gossip behind her back. That night, Renato sneaks back to his observation spot. Celebrating justice, the lawyer dances with Malena. He then starts making advances toward her. Malena offers him money, but he throws it away, saying his services are worth much more. He pleads with her to marry him, all the while beginning to strip her of her clothes. Renato doesn't get to watch the rest as the branch he's standing on breaks beneath him. After that incident, Malena stops appearing in public entirely. Rumors begin to spread around town that Malena is preparing to marry the lawyer. Renato can't comprehend how she could agree, knowing that that scoundrel never bathes and reeks worse than a pig. The lawyer visits his mother to get her blessing for marrying Malena, but she drives him away, refusing to let that harlot carry her family's name. Time passes, and Renato finally gets a pair of trousers. Meanwhile, new gossip circulates in town. Malena and the lawyer's engagement has come to an end. Following her once more, Renato discovers that Malena is meeting with a local man. This man brings her food, as no one in town will sell her groceries, nor will anyone give her a job. However, the man demands payment in kind for the bag of flour and bread. Just as things escalate, an enemy air raid forces everyone to hide from the bombing. Amidst the chaos, Malena's father's home is destroyed, and his lifeless body is pulled from the rubble. After his funeral, Renato watches Malena again. That night, a car pulls up to her house. A local man delivers cigarettes and coffee to Malena, for which she gives herself to him. The man promises to return every Tuesday and asks Malena not to forget to request groceries. The next morning, Malena appears in the town square. She has cut her long hair short and dyed it brunette, making her even more stunning. She sits at a cafe table, lights a cigarette, and is immediately surrounded by men offering her a light. Renato imagines himself saving her from these savages. Soon after, Renato sees Malena in the company of German officers, and his imagination runs wild, picturing her serving the Wehrmacht officers. The thought makes him faint. Renato's mother believes her son is possessed by a demon and invites exorcists to drive the spirit away. But Renato's father believes the boy is simply growing up and needs a woman, so he takes Renato to a brothel. There, all the women remind Renato of Malena. Among them, he notices one girl who instantly catches his eye. To the sound of explosions outside, Renato becomes a man. Meanwhile, in the town square, the locals welcome Allied forces, celebrating the end of German occupation and collaboration. The women decide to exact revenge on Malena. They drag her to the square, beat her, shave her head, and humiliate her. Afterward, Malena is driven out of the town. Following her, Renato discovers that Malena is leaving for Messina. Sometime later, Nino, Malena's husband, returns to town. Believed to have died in the war, Nino lost an arm and was taken prisoner. Now back, he cannot find his wife, and no one is willing to tell him what happened. Their house is occupied by refugees. Climbing the same tree as before, Renato throws a letter to Nino. In it, he explains everything, that Malena had always been faithful to him, but many things happened during his absence. Renato tells him she was believed widowed and had no one to turn to. He also informs Nino that Malena has gone to Messina. Nino takes a train to find her. A year passes. The town has returned to its normal, routine life. One day, everyone freezes in shock upon seeing Malèna and Nino walking through the town square together. Renato's girlfriend doesn't understand why everyone is staring at Malèna. Malèna visits the local market. The same women who beat her a year ago now greet her politely. One offers her vegetables at a discount, while another gives her a jacket, saying Malèna can pay whenever she has the money. Renato appears once more and follows Malèna. She heads home but drops her bag, spilling its contents. Renato rushes to help her collect everything, then wishes her happiness. The film ends there. Thank you for watching, and see you next time on the channel.